Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth.
Outrage is growing across the country after a new mom says she was forced to leave a hospital while she was in labor and then ended up giving birth in her car. Now they're calling for accountability and changes in hospital policy. Our Sophie Flay has the details.
A Chicago woman is demanding answers from a hospital she says discharged her while she was in labor. 38-year-old Mercedes Wells says she was having contractions 1 minute apart and knew the baby was coming, but a nurse sent her home.
I was in excruciating pain. She seen me in pain and agony, and I guess she still perceived me to not be in labor.
The family sharing this video of Wells being wheeled out of the hospital. She then gave birth 8 minutes later in her truck on the side of the highway, her husband delivering their baby himself.
It's totally God's grace. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I don't have any medical license or anything to deliver a baby.
Wells says she spent 6 hours at the hospital but never saw a doctor. She blames racial discrimination.
I was stripped of my dignity as a person because I was treated less than an animal.
Can we agree that a woman in active labor should not be sent away without first being seen by a doctor?
The CEO of Franciscan Health Crown Point Hospital responding, saying, "The video and the comments it has generated are deeply troubling, and we understand the concern this has raised. The video is just one part of the information we are reviewing as part of a thorough investigation into this alleged incident." The good news? The couple says their baby daughter, Alina, is healthy and doing well.
As I went through the pain, contractions, it progressed to 7 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes to 2 minutes apart. The pain got worse and worse. She still came in, checked me again and said I was 3 centimeters still. Regardless of the labor and the pain I was going through, she still said that, well, I told the doctor that you haven't progressed, so we're going to discharge you. I never seen a doctor. The doctor never showed his face, her face, whoever the doctor is, I don't know. But I never saw anybody, just the nurse. And she told me that they had to send me home.
There's got to be some form of justice here. Legally, what are you thinking?
Well, first and foremost, I'm grateful to be walking this walk with them, despite the fact they should have never been put in this place. What I will say is that they are seeking a meeting like we are asking for with the administration. And at the end of the day, we want to ask about what their protocols and policies are that would allow for them to say that this type of thing was okay. There's no way in the world that you can tell me it should have been something that happened, that a woman who is in active labor with her contractions 1 minute apart should be dismissed, and then coupled with that, accompanied by security as they were taken out of the hospital. And 8 minutes later, she gives birth on the side of the road because of that poor decision making. We want a meeting with them so that we can ask them why that happened, how that happened, whether or not they're going to do something to change the protocols that allow that to happen, and whether or not this woman who was the nurse that allowed this to occur has been or is going to be dismissed.
And Mercedes, Cannon, Leon studies have shown that Black maternal health outcomes consistently lag behind those of white women. Mercedes, I want to ask you, what responsibility do hospitals have in providing care to all pregnant women? What do you want to see come out of this and you telling your story?
Listen to the patient. Treat people with dignity and respect.
For the handful of people who may have thought that perhaps I was making a tad too much of this the other day, no, I'm not. This happens constantly, all the time. No sooner than you get one story of one of these atrocities, then another comes in. This black couple went to a hospital because this woman was in the process of giving birth, and the hospital had it where the husband had to argue with them for hours. 6 hours he was arguing with them that his wife needed medical treatment. And here they are saying that she's not far enough along for them to treat her. And they kicked this couple out without them ever having seen a doctor. I'm sure there are some of those crooked doctors there who actually said, go ahead and just throw them out. And while it's good that the family has retained a lawyer, we need to understand something. These incidents are not about money. This is about the lives that this medical genocide costs. Black babies die at a rate several times higher than any other group, and the same goes for black pregnant mothers. And this is the reason why these things are happening deliberately, intentionally. These racial atrocities happen all the time, but the difference is there's cell phone cameras to document it now. But the goal is not to have a video library of black mothers and their babies being put at risk. We don't just want documentation, we need action to be taken. And that action means punishment. Criminals who subject black mothers and their babies to this kind of treatment need to be in a cage. Yes, there do need to be lawsuits, of course, but a civil judgment wouldn't have done this woman any good if she had hemorrhaged to death in that truck, or if their baby had died. And it also needs to be remembered that a large amount of those black mothers who die after one of these incidents occurs after they gave birth, not on the day of. It's usually like a few days later because the trauma they were exposed to is just that great. So when you see stories about these black mothers being denied medical care when they're trying to give birth at a hospital, you also need to know that they're not out of the woods yet just because they delivered the baby. You have to keep an eye on the mother for weeks after these traumatic incidents, and you have to watch the babies for years. That's the true cost of whenever these racist hospital personnel pull a stunt like this. You have not just endangered the life of the mother and the baby on that day, but there's going to be risks to their lives that's going to be following for months, if not years afterwards. Those babies have been traumatized as well at the most vulnerable point in their lives. This is why I get mad as hell about this subject. And I don't think the family should be asking for an apology. Apologies, hell. I don't want so-called reforms either. I want the racist animals who jeopardize black lives to be punished, and punishment means prison time. And I want their slaughterhouses that they call hospitals to be shut down. This is the reason we need an anti-black hate crime law specifically for us, because we are the only ones who are singled out and subjected to this kind of life-threatening and often life-ending hostility. And being denied medical care must be part of any hate crime legislation. There must be a legal framework in place to not only enable black victims of medical discrimination to seek civil penalties, but for the most important thing of all, that the perpetrators be immediately forced out of any role in health care and be put in a cage. The reason that these things happen is because these racist animals know that there's no criminal statute that's going to be applied to their crimes, and that many of these lawmakers are themselves former doctors or nurses, so of course they're going to be covering up their own past bad behavior. And don't let anyone tell you that there's not enough interest in this. There's plenty of interest. What there isn't is enough focus. The black media has been talking about it, but that's not good enough. Where's the Congressional Immigrant Caucus at while all this is going on? Well, right now, they're attending to far more important matters than whether black babies and their mothers live or die. Right now, they're aggrandizing themselves by taking part in interviews where they talk about a black, brown, and Asian alliance. So that's what the Congressional Black Caucus is up to while all this is going on. Not a word about the constant and deliberate life-threatening treatment of black mothers and their babies. Far as the CBC is concerned, the only time they want to see a black mother is on Election Day. And as for the babies, they don't want to see them at all. While the CBC is busy doing these little meetings with Asian and Hispanic lawmakers, nobody brings up the fact that the Asians got a hate crime law specifically for them, even though at the very time that that legislation was proposed and passed, black people were and remain the majority of hate crimes victims. But it didn't take a study or any years-long congressional debate about that law either. They said they wanted an Asian hate crime law in 2020, and the next year it was passed. Black people demand a hate crime law for decades, and we're just ignored, just like black mothers in labor are ignored in these hospitals. The CBC are active participants in all of this. They're the melanated foot soldiers for anti-black racism. Their silence is not some victimless crime. Whenever they refuse to speak on issues like this, that's what the white media uses as the unspoken approval and permission that, oh, black folks don't care about this because our cherry-picked bootlicks, they're not saying anything. And that's what the society sees as well. Hey, if these black politicians aren't saying anything, it can't be a problem, right? They should be the main ones pushing legislation that would strip these hospitals of federal funds when they do things like this. Hold these bastards funding over their heads, and you'll stop seeing these racist doctors and nurses being so eager to throw black patients out in the street. They only do it because they know that nothing's going to be done about it. Time for that to change. And speaking of change, don't let anybody change the subject whenever we bring this up. Don't let anyone decide that they're going to either talk around this issue or that they're going to try to slyly say nothing about it at all. The cowards who try to tell us that reparations is just too big a request to make, why don't they think that merely making sure black mothers don't get thrown out of hospitals when they're in labor is too much? Notice how these cowards never talk about this, and they can't lie and say it's not a problem because it happens so often. So instead, the walking trash like A. Dummy and others, they don't talk about it at all. They don't give their typical black conservative claptrap either, because it doesn't fit crimes like this. The usual deflections and dodges they like to use, like white racism ain't really all that bad, and of course the all-purpose but what about black on black crime, that doesn't fit and doesn't work when you have a subject like this. They can't drag out the respectability politics and personal responsibility spiel when black mothers are screaming in excruciating pain because these white racist physicians refuse to treat them while they're right in front of them giving birth. So since these black conservatives can't use their usual canned answers, they just don't say anything about this at all. And these are also the same morons who say, but what about black on black crime? They say that's everything. Well, you can't say it to this. They can't drag out that old saw when we talk about black infant and maternal mortality rates. And on top of that, it would look damn weird if they decide to say to themselves, well, I admit that it's important, but let's move on to something else. So instead, they can't even afford to talk about this issue at all. But these are the same liars who claim to be pro-life. And they'll be the first ones to say that we can't call out white racism when white cops kill black folks. You can't call that out. After all, black folks is murdering their own children with abortions every year. If they really cared about black babies, then they'd be leading the charge to stop hospitals from selectively targeting black pregnant mothers. They would be leading the charge to defund hospitals who have track records of black patients dying at rates far higher than everyone else. That's what these allegedly pro-life Negroes would be saying, that is, if they actually cared about black lives and about black babies, but they don't. And sadly, these cowardly and lying black conservatives you see online, on TV, or on the radio are not alone in their attitude of contempt. Your black feminists don't say a word about this issue either, do they? When has Angela Rye, Joy Reid, Michelle Obama, Tiffany Cross, Jamila Lemieux, or any of these black feminists ever gotten on any politician's case about this? You've never seen Tarana Burke saying a word about this, but then again, as she herself said, why is it her job to go after white men? Because these white men run the hospitals where black mothers' lives are being endangered and their babies are being killed. That's why. You haven't heard Charlemagne the Fraud talk about it or Roly-Poly Martin either. These creeps love to brag about the interviews they do with these DC politicians, but not one of them has ever mentioned this. Not to any of these politicians. Not one of these bootlicks ever puts these white politicians on the spot and demands that they pledge legislation to put an end to this medical genocide. These bootlicks who pathetically try to palm themselves off as being black media, they don't even talk about this subject on their own little sideshows. The only way that they would ever have the nerve to talk about it would be only if their white paymasters brought the subject up, and even then they would just slavishly repeat whatever their white paymaster told them to say. Other than that, they're not talking about it at all, because to talk about it pushes the fact that there needs to be legislation. Action needs to be taken. This type of egregious and blatant anti-black racism should have been addressed through a raft of laws long ago. Instead, it wasn't, and still isn't today. Family, when you get a chance to confront some politician either in person or some podcast or TV program, whatever it may be, make it a point to bring this up. Black people are the only ones treated like this, so we need legislation and criminal penalties specifically for us. And your white leftist commentators, how many of them have mentioned this? They love to slam their gums about Medicare for all and preserving Obamacare, but that's about it. I know this is not a sexy subject, family, but having to see one's wife or daughter in excruciating pain while racist hospital staff think it's funny to ignore them or to throw them out when they're giving birth right in front of you. We can't continue the practice of not focusing on something until the problem affects you or someone you know personally, because by then it's too late. There's a lot of reasons why we require reparations, a lot of evils that we've been forced to endure simply because of our race and because of our lineage, truth be told. And this happens to be one of them. Punishing anti-black medical discrimination is a subject that belongs right up there with reparations and an anti-black hate crime law. It's all part of the exact same problem. Black folks better start getting used to focusing on subjects like this, no matter how uncomfortable it may make you. Because a people who look the other way while their enemies murder their babies are also a people who have no future. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Dean Ballantyne, William Williamson, Jimmy Whitfield, Sean Covington, and Wahib Abdul. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.